Well, I'll look and see if I missed his call.
Go back there, John.
Call him. Okay, Michelle. How fine are you? Okay, get yourself situated. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I don't hear. Just tune it out.
Just tune me out. I really get out, turn around and whack.
I don't see it here. Oh, yes. Okay. All right. Okay, so I need a director.
Oh, thanks. Let's do it here. What do you want me to do? What's happening?
Finally, I got outside. I know, I don't mean today. It's been on before. But you didn't watch it. You should be watching it. Come on, the other one. You have to put all this stuff. I didn't put it all. In the past, just put yours in the same thing. But, so I gotta get this. And I wanna get one of these. These solicitors are driving us crazy in our subdivision.
Do you want to watch in Hampton Hills? Is it what's happening in Hampton Hills or just Kansas? Okay.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Village of Campton Hills, it's August 15, 2023, 7 o'clock. Please rise for the pledge. Roll call, please.
Trustee Bowden?
Here.
Trustee Burson? Here. Trustee McElvey?
Here.
Trustee Millette?
Present.
Trustee Morgan?
Here.
Trustee Muncy?
Here.
And President O'Neill.
Present. And to lead us in the pledge today is Cub Scout Troop number 46, and that's the boys' troop, and the
Not Cub
girls.
Scout, it's just troops.
It's just troops, okay, and then the girls is 946, so. You can come forward. Okay. All right.
Anytime, pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have public comment.
Michael Dwyer? Oh, I don't know.
It's a, yes, it's a microphone.
I think if you're using the microphone.
I don't know the microphone. Bill Herring. Buffalo Group. Lots of issues going on, lack of transparency. Almost everyone, in fact, every one of you ran on transparency. And yet, there's no transparency. Okay? Be honest with each other. Okay? No financials. You're 25% of the way through. You're actually, what, 3.5 months, and you don't have a single financial. Yet you keep passing things, warrants, adding positions, increasing salaries, spending money galore. That's transparency. Are you guys kidding me? Okay? You're the most opaque board you've ever had. Okay? You don't know what that means? Look it up. So let's start. I'm going to start first of all with some action items. Action number 6, the appointment of the village treasurer, okay, to become the budget officer. I'm sorry, this gentleman, if he's here, I apologize. He's not competent. You need to go find anyone. That's the bottom line. Okay? He can't get the financials out.
Oh,
He's-
Mr. Rudd.
Well, I apologize to you, but I'm speaking about you.
That's okay. We're the
Those
first person.
financials belong coming out, okay? And the excuse that I'm working on an audit is gone on too long, and the last statement that came out, which is he still be working on it through September, okay? Clearly, this isn't a position, okay? It's beyond his capabilities. Find somebody to do the project and get them out, okay? The public deserve to know where you're at by GL account, not some crazy summary of some revenue and a couple of expenses. That's ridiculous at this point, okay? You all should be ashamed of yourselves. You're allowed to get to this point. You're so busy backstabbing each other, okay? And not doing what you should be doing, which is getting information to the public, okay? You guys owe it to the community, okay? So I suggest you stop, as one trustee pointed out to me years ago, stop majoring in the minors, okay? Start doing the things that people want to see. So we'll start with that. Next, the clerk's powers and duties under 17B3. Okay, small little statement put in there that says a small budget will be provided for the clerk that did not exist before. That's a quote. This will then be used to compensate the deputy clerk and other miscellaneous requirements. That is not budgeted for. That should not be allowed. There's no reason the clerk can turn in expenses that are approved by the legislative body, which is you people here. Okay. They have no business having their own budget. That is ridiculous if you consider doing that, and inappropriate. Next, item C, a motion to approve 03-2313, village president spending authority up to $7,000 without board approval. Okay? You own the budget, legislative body. The executive division does not own that budget. You do. You're responsible for it. She does not need, as the president, any budget nor spending authority without your guys' approval. Okay? There's a provision already in there that you know about that says in emergency cases that it can be overridden. Okay? What would be necessary for the president to have on? The previous 2 presidents had no spending authority, ran the place line. So that is ridiculous. I don't know if it's because it's image thing or whatever you guys are thinking, but that's nuts. There's nothing that the president can't get by going through anyone or coming to the board and asking for calls. I'm sure if it's appropriate, you'll approve it. But, again, you own the budget, not the executive branch. Next, if I've got time left, a few warrant issues. You've got a $98,502 bill coming from Campton Township for the road and bridge. I hope you have an invoice from the township for that. And it should not be paid if you don't have an invoice. That's a huge issue, as you know, in the past. Next, under page 3, item 2, interest charges and late fees. We're not paying bills on time. Guess what? You're wasting the village money. And it's really the people's money. $109.56 on bank charges and $41 on late fees. Okay? That's not your money to waste. Okay? Property tax bill. I thought that because this was turned over to the village and that one should be a non-for-profit, why are you paying property taxes? I'll let you guys decide what the issue is on that. Page 8, Larson court case. Had $1375.34 so far spent. For what? You guys are milking this to death. End it. The people voted, the new people in, to get that thing ended. Do your job. Get it over with. It's ridiculous we're wasting money on that. The Stone Turn Group had, obviously for an internal secret investigation going on. Okay? $5,000 retainer for an investigation. This is nuts. Run the village. You're bringing in all kinds of crazy outside people, hiring lawyers galore, doing investigations. Enough. It's embarrassing. Learn to run the place. Deal with your issues and your personnel internally. That's all I have. It's ridiculous.
Savannah King?
I wrote it down. I hope I can project my voice.
Do I have to be over there?
Yes.
You can do that. My name is Savannah King. I have lived in Campton Hill for the past 13 years. I love this town and the opportunity to raise my kids here. Today I'm supporting my children in their scouting experience. They're currently working on the citizenship in the community merit badge. To earn it, they need to learn about their community and about what makes a good citizen. Part of being a caring member of a community involves serving as a volunteer. I am proud to say today that even though they only needed 8 hours, in the past few months, my kids, 12 and 13, have helped with over 4 hours in the National Night Out, 5 hours establishing trails at Gray Willows Farm, 2 hours restoring natural areas in Harley Woods, and even 25 hours as volunteer counselors at the Hampton Township Creative Camp. That is, even after you, 36.5 hours of loving your town. Unfortunately, as I bring them in front of you today, I'm not proud of how things are handled at the village hall. I read to them the minutes regarding how you're spending non-budgeted money on lawyers, and the articles giving our town a bad reputation as a hostile workplace. That is not something I ever thought our town would be in the news for. Today, I'm teaching my kids that we need to ask you, elected officials, to do better. Please work on letting our town be known as a place where we work together for the benefit of our community. Show them that the reason you became elected was to listen and represent the citizens of your town, my town. Finally, let me share with you this scout law my kids are learning. Let it inspire you to become a positive role model in our community. Be trustworthy. Tell the truth and keep promises to your citizens. Your community depends on you. Be loyal. Show that you care about your community. Be helpful. Volunteer to help others without expecting a reward. Be friendly. Be a friend to everyone, even people who you think are different from you. Be courteous. Be polite to everyone and always use good manners, included in the village hall. Be kind. Treat others as you want to be treated. Never harm others' reputations or careers. Be obedient. Learn and obey the laws of your community. These should include what each one of you should and should not do as elected officials. Be cheerful. Cheerfully do the tasks that come your way, and thrifty. Try not to be wasteful. Use your time in our budget wisely. Be brave, because you face difficult situations even when you're afraid, and do what is right despite what others might be asking you or telling you to do. Clean. Keep your conscience clean because you are doing what is best for our town. And reverent, because the respect to the beliefs of yours and the beliefs of others, to do their religious obligations. It's something that maybe not apply here, but whatever you believe on, let it guide you to take the actions that you must take. Thank you.
cede my speaking time with anyone else, but I can't top these two. So if they want to add more, let them take my time.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
I guess I'm sorry I entered late. We are having some technical difficulties. We don't have the meeting live streamed. I think we have it another place, so. I guess there was an issue regarding paying, our village paying taxes. What we were told by the township was that we needed to pay them and then we would get a reimbursement. So we already paid the first installment. We did get reimbursed for the first installment. We're paying the second installment, we'll get reimbursed. The reason we did pay taxes was because Helping Hand used to be here. Now we have a nonprofit. We won't see that again. Okay?
Appreciate the explanation.
Sure.
Okay. All right, moving along, we're on the consent agenda. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda? Ed?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Item 4B.
Okay. Any other items?
Yeah, the warrants, item C.
Item C. Okay, a motion to move the consent agenda with the exception of 4B and 4C.
So moved.
Okay, moved by trustee Muncy.
Second.
Trustee McKelvey, roll call.
Trustee Muncy,
Aye.
trustee McKelvey,
Aye.
trustee Bodnar,
Aye.
trustee Burson,
Aye.
trustee Millette,
Aye.
and trustee Morgan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. So, trustee Muncy, 4B, motion to approve the meeting minutes of July 18, 2023, village board meeting.
Yes, thank you, President Winnicki. On item 6E, the motion to advise and consent to village president Winnicki's appointment of Carmen Forte, Klein, Thorpe, and Jenkins. There are just a couple of errors on that. In the third and also then the sixth bullet point, it should say that it's an RFQ process, not an RG, it's just a typo. It should be RFQ process. And then in the voting, this vote is actually the vote that occurred in motion 6F. 6E was Millette's vote, and I would ask Millette to confirm this, please. I believe Millette's vote was an aye, not an nay, and I believe President Winnicki did not vote on 6E.
Okay. All right. Thank you, trustee Muncy. Any other comments or questions? Okay, motion to approve. As amended, okay. Motion to approve 4B as amended.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Muncy,
Second.
second by trustee Burson. Any more discussion? Okay, roll call.
Trustee Muncy,
Aye.
trustee Burson,
Aye.
trustee Bodnar,
Aye.
trustee McKelvey,
Aye.
trustee Millette,
Aye.
and trustee Morgan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Let's see, 4C, motion to approve payment of bills per warrant list number 24-06. Trustee McKelvey?
Yeah, I just had a question regarding legal bills or kind of lack thereof. I know I raised it at the last meeting, and maybe our village administrator or you, Madam President, could answer that. I don't know. We have not received any bills yet from Attorney Shepro.
I have not seen any.
Okay, then. Okay, Barb, I think you have your mic on, you might be getting feedback to each other. Then my question, then I have another question, because my understanding is that Attorney Shepro appeared at the August 2nd litigation hearing. I think, in fact, I see that the attorney from Montana Welch is here, but my understanding is that he said he was there on your behalf, Barb. Is that correct?
I would say yes.
Would say yes. Then my question, if that's accurate, then my question is we had voted not to renew his contract, which expired on July 30th. So my question is, how can we then have him go, again, spending money after we basically said it expires on the 30th?
He's not going to send us a bill.
Okay, so he's not gonna attend this bill, but you did ask him to attend, is that what you're saying?
I didn't directly ask him to attend. I'm sure he attended for my benefit.
Well, then I would at least go on record, if he's attending on his own accord, I would ask that he cease, because he's no longer representing this village, representing you, and if you didn't tell him to be there, it's insanity that we're allowing that to happen. I know I sound like a broken record on regular order, and I don't want to be, but that's just not right. It doesn't pass the smell test. We should not be spending money. You're saying it's gratis. I don't want his gratis. His contract expired on July 30th by the vote of this board, so be it.
All right, understood, and I think he's just trying to be helpful, but I do understand his contract is over, so,
All right, I make a motion to approve the warrants.
okay. Motion made to approve the amended motion. Oh, just a question, okay. Motion to approve 4C, moved by McKelvey, second by trustee Burson. Okay,
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Bodnar?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
And trustee Muncy.
Aye.
okay, motion passes. All right, department reports. Police Department, Sergeant Ladon.
All right, July monthly activity calls for service, 174, 3 arrests, which included 1 DUI, 12 accidents. Of those 12 accidents, 1 was a rollover with injury, 51 citations issued. August 1st, which was Tuesday, we held National Night Out, which we do every year. It was at the Congregational United Church of Christ over at Fox Mill, La Fox Road. This was the first year we did it there. We moved it from where it's been previously on School Street. We had the largest attendance to date, rough estimates, about 1,400 residents. They all enjoyed free food, beverages, cotton candy, dilly bars. Superior Air Helicopter made appearance. All 3 fire departments participated, including extrication. Coda demo, which is always a hit. Again, great location, beautiful weather. We saw some of the trustees and village staff that was out there, which was excellent. Thank you. A lot of thank yous to go out. I'm going to just give a few of them because a lot of work goes into this every year, entire year. This isn't done in a couple days or a month. So, of course, the Congregational United Church of Christ, Fox Mill HOA, CERT, CPA, and the Community Relations Committee. They plan for this all year, especially Lauren Moore. They do an amazing job. So everyone else that came out was in attendance, the volunteers, participants, it was amazing. The 2023-24 school year has started for District 303. Yesterday was the first day back to school. Officers were at both Wasco and Belgraham. Up last month or so, I've attended numerous meetings with 303, the staff and first responders, discussing safety plans and the guidelines. Coda made an appearance this morning. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he'll be there for an hour in the mornings. Kids that are having a hard time, maybe at school or family life, he's going to be there to greet them. So it went great today. Me and Officer Hatt are preparing for Too Good for Drugs, which starts this fall at both Bell and Wasco. I reviewed department mandates and training in the month of July. All officers are up to date. We're not out any mandates or training. CERT program, I met with Chief Clucci from Elburn Countryside and Chief Sikora from Elburn Police Department. They're both respective representatives of the program. We discussed the CERT program, upcoming new class, and the needs of the CERT team, which I'm currently working on. And finally, we have Fall Festival coming up, which is, once again, held at the church. Fox Mill and La Fox, everyone knows it's a great event. Usually they average over 3,000 people. I met with Kim from CERT to discuss CERT's participant, along with the organizers of the event. We discussed parking, security, and traffic control. I will ask extra officers to come in and work the event on their off days because it's a Saturday, it's September 16th. We'll make sure it goes smoothly, and I'll have an operational plan prior to the event. Any questions?
Any questions?
All right.
All right, great report. All right, moving on, 5B, Treasurer's Report, Timothy.
Okay, so I've submitted the treasurer's report to all the trustees and the mayor for the public's knowledge. It's basically broken out into 3 sections. The revenue that we've received thus far for the first quarter, the major expenses, which is predominantly personnel, and then the cash balances. So the revenues we've received are slightly above what we budgeted, but you know the revenues come in kind of lumpy, so even though it's a little over, it doesn't necessarily mean that's how we're gonna end the whole year. The best revenue sources are income tax. We've received about 38% of what we budgeted, and we've only been through 25% of the year, so that's a good sign. Payroll expense has come in 28,000 favorable to budget, and the cash balances have not changed much since the end of the fiscal year. They're about $6 million. I don't know if any trustees have any specific questions on the report. I do know there's some concerns about the detail line items. Traditionally, you would get that. I can't promise that till the 23rd. Just to be clear, I have spoken to some of the Finance Committee members the last meeting. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. I thought it was understood that my first report with the line items would be with the August data. Maybe they misunderstood me to mean it would be prepared for August.
It's unreasonable for almost 4 months without producing financials.
Mike, you're out of order, I'm sorry.
Okay, but we can talk about that another time if you'd like.
No,
Okay.
Thursday at the
Yeah,
finance committee.
I think you two should get together and
Sure.
discuss it. Yeah, thank you, Timothy.
Sure.
Any questions? I'm sorry, any questions for Timothy? Okay.
I have a question, if you don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, how could we possibly get the full financial report done a little quicker? And I'm not asking you to spend more time or neglect your full-time job, but just, do you need assistance? I understood that there was some assistance that Denise hired. What do you need to potentially get this done soon?
Well, I mean, obviously time, but the biggest issue with getting the financial reports done is we're in the middle of an audit. So the audit ends, I'm sorry, not the audit, the fiscal year ends on 4/30 of the calendar year. I came in 5/17, so that whole fiscal year wasn't even mine to prepare. So I had to kind of know what the numbers were before I presented them to the auditors when they had questions about them. They're done with their field work. I'm just getting them some final schedules. So now I have more time to get all the data inputted into Cassell, which is, I think, what some of the Finance Committee members would like, to see the report coming directly out of Cassell, rather than me preparing it kind of ad hoc. So to answer your question, time, and as I said, I believe that I could deliver it in August, September, August's report. And I still believe I could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Did that help? As an answer? Okay.
Yeah, it helped. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Timothy. Okay, next we have 5C, Building and Zoning July Report.
Yes, the building department has been very busy. Today we had adjudication hearing. The month of July, we issued 50 permits, and we had 50 permits applied for, we issued 58, and there were 6 completed. So we continue to have people coming in and getting permits. Most of the permits right now are for roofing. Any questions?
Okay, any questions for Denise for Building and Zoning? All right. Moving along, 6 action items. A, motion to ratify the retainer agreement.
President Wenke, would you mind if I made a comment just about action items in general?
Sure.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure.
It was brought to the board's attention during our 7/18 meeting, July 18th, that we stopped using the deliberative process of first bringing items up for discussion, and then at a later meeting, or the next meeting, having those become action items. Yet, here again, it appears that there's at least 3 items on here, C, D, and E, that really have not been discussed, 2 of which definitely have not been discussed, 1 of which wasn't really discussed in this same manner or form, but they're action items again, they're not discussion items first. So I'd like to move, and I will, I move to change items 6, C, D, and E to current discussion items rather than action items.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Trustee McKelvey. You want to move forward with that now? Is that what you're saying?
I'd like to, yes.
Okay.
No, I just make a comment. I think to his point, that's, I think I said at the beginning of last meeting, is that I just think it makes this stuff go easier. All of a sudden, when I saw this packet and I saw that we're changing the code, I'm going, changing the code? and then having even been discussed about changing codes, that's just, and I can't imagine a citizen in the village of Campton Hills saying on Sunday or Monday that we're changing the code on Tuesday on something. So I just think, we're not saying we're against, I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm just saying that it should be discussed first, as we've done in the past, and then do regular order. And, you know, to that point, and if I could just have 30 seconds, I'll try to make it quick. When you think of regular order, I go back to the last meeting where a couple times during the meeting, I know Mr. Muncy said it once and I said it later, you know, whatever happened to the RFQ process? And you did answer, Madam President, and I appreciate that, President Winicky, that you did answer it in the meeting by saying you decided not to use it. The thing I struggled with, regular order, it was our very first meeting, which was May 2nd. And if you recall, there was a discussion about attorneys and hiring attorneys, and what happened was we decided to talk about it in closed session, and then we came back out and we made a motion. A motion was made, I think, by Mr. Millette, Trustee Millette, to hire Shepro, and part of that motion was, in essence, the RFQ process, because that was discussed both prior to going into closed session, in closed session, and when we came out, and that was a motion, and it was a 4-to-1 vote. And then in last meeting, regular order would say we should have gone through with that process, but you decided on your own to go against what the legislature voted on, which was to do it. I'm not crying over spilled milk now, I'm just saying that's just not right. This board voted to do an RFQ. No one's opposed to the attorney that we ended up hiring. I'm not opposed at all, but we didn't follow the process, which is what this board voted for, and we didn't do it. So that's all I wanted to say. That's what I mean by regular order. We got to be better than that, and we can be better than that, and we can work together, and we can, you know, dot the I's and cross the T's. We need to slow down a little bit, and we just need to chop the wood as we see it. And if we vote on something and it's approved, it should be honored, and that was not honored. Thank you.
All right, back to action items, actually discussion items now. I'm sorry? Oh, Nick, I'm sorry.
I had a question, comment before we vote on this. If I could just hear why these went into action items versus discussion items. Hear from somebody, me, I don't know why they went from discussion to action. I don't know if there was reasoning behind that, but I'd like to hear that before we vote on it.
I can speak most specifically in regards to the action item regarding the clerk amendment. There's been significant discussion already in open session, as well as additional discussion outside of open session. It didn't seem to me that, and I will say I was the one that specifically asked that this be placed on as an action item rather than a discussion item. I felt that in this particular case, we had plenty of discussion, public discussion in particular about it, and I felt that it was appropriate to move it to action at this time.
Okay.
Can we have a discussion right now, prior to voting on it? Is this okay?
You know, action items absolutely can be discussed, and you can vote them up or down.
We're just kind of
or
going
ask
out of order.
questions.
I'm
Yeah.
not a parliamentarian, but there's a motion on the floor.
Right.
There's a motion on the floor whether or not to move C, D, and E
Okay.
to discussion items. That's the motion on the floor. So the discussion on the floor really should be pertained to that.
Okay, and you second,
Can-
right?
Yeah, I accept.
Okay. Okay, roll call.
Can I just?
Can I ask a
Oh,
question?
no, well, we're out of order here.
The discussion should really be on moving them to discussion items.
Okay.
Seems kind of superfluous, but that would be the discussion now. If they are then moved to discussion, then we discuss it.
And can I clarify if items, if the decision is to move them to discussion items, does that preclude action?
You can move them off from discussion and act on what's going to be fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Or we could just have debate associated with the action?
Absolutely. And then you could vote on them at the next meeting.
there's really no need to move them to discussion particularly unless the intention was to delay.
They can also be individually discussed after a motion is made to approve them.
Okay, Ed, do you want to amend your motion to move 6C, D, and E to current discussion items?
Well, first of all, said it's not only the intention to delay, that wouldn't be the only reason. The intention is to allow the deliberative process that we created to go on. If you have an action item, it has to be voted on or tabled. So these are at risk of potentially being voted down because they haven't been discussed. That's the other possibility here. So I prefer the deliberative process of having them first in the discussion and then in action. We have a motion and a second. Let's vote on it and see what everybody thinks.
Okay, so your motion is to move it, C,
From
D,
action
E,
items to, yes.
to discussion
To
items,
discussion
and a
items.
second, do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, okay, roll call. Roll call.
Trustee Muncy,
Aye.
trustee McKelvey,
Aye.
trustee Bogner,
Pass.
trustee Burson,
Nay.
trustee Millet,
Aye.
trustee Morgan,
Aye.
trustee Bogner,
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. Okay. Yeah. All right, back to action item 6A, motion to ratify the retainer agreement with Montana and Welsh LLC to provide legal services related to the review and processing of Freedom of Information Act requests received prior to July 18, 2023, and I'll entertain a motion to move this.
So moved.
Okay, moved by trustee Muncy, and second?
Second.
Second by trustee Morgan. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, seeing none.
trustee Muncy,
Aye.
trustee Morgan,
Aye.
trustee Bogner,
Aye.
trustee Burson,
Aye.
trustee McKelvey,
Aye.
trustee Millet.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We'll go to 6B, motion to approve resolution R-23-19, a resolution authorizing the execution of a retainer agreement with Montana and Welsh LLC to act as special counsel.
I'd like to make a motion to table that indefinitely.
Okay, table indefinitely, and do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, trustee Bogner seconds that motion, and roll call.
Trustee Morgan,
Aye.
trustee Bogner,
Aye.
trustee Burson,
Aye.
trustee McKelvey,
Aye.
trustee Millet,
Aye.
trustee Muncy.
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. All right. Moving along, so we'll discussion item now, C. Motion to approve ordinance O-23-13, an ordinance amending the Kenton Hills Village Code regarding the village president's spending authority. Do I have a motion or discussion? Do discussion. Any discussion on that item?
But somebody needs to make the motion first. No? Oh, sorry, I forgot. I just have a question.
Sure.
What is it that the president would need the spending authority for? Because I just can't think of anything.
I think that there's a certain amount, a small amount of money that is available for smaller items without having to come in front of the board. I think the administrator has the same type of spending authority. And so we thought we would amend, or actually change the ordinance.
I guess I'm trying to determine, though, in the past, I think the president was able to make small purchases and then be reimbursed for those small purchases. It seems like $7,500 isn't exactly small, and I just can't think of anything that would rise to that level. So if you could give us an example of why it would be needed, rather than spending that amount of money or waiting to talk to the board or get approval to spend that amount of money, I just want to understand it. That's really all. I'm not trying to be combative. I just really want to understand it.
Yeah, I don't have any examples. I'm very thrifty, and this actually wasn't, it was proposed by Trustee Burson, yeah.
It was, and I don't want to get into specifics. I think we know that it's not appropriate right now, but we have been faced with a wide variety of fairly extraordinary circumstances in the last couple of months. And there have been points during that process when I think that if our president had the flexibility to act in the moment, knowing that she would come to us to ratify those expenditures later, I don't think that that's a problem. As she's pointed out, we've given that authority to the village administrator. And my understanding is that that authority was always given to our president and was removed some years ago during a period of time that there was some conflict between the board and the president. And that spend was effectively transferred from the president to the administrator. As I think you have observed recently, Trustee Muncy, it's not necessarily appropriate to react to specific circumstances like that in making code changes. But I do think that it's appropriate for our village president to have some flexibility. We just went through a 1-month period without a meeting. I think it would probably be a good idea for the village president being able to make a move without us during that time.
Question.
Trustee McCallum?
When you say the president, we should have the ability to make a move, I don't know what that means.
Spend money if it was necessary.
Yeah, again, I think Mr. Millette and I were part of the board when that was changed, and I think Citizen O'Dwyer kind of did a very good synopsis of that at the beginning of this meeting, and stating that it has not been a problem since that authority for money didn't exist. Because if they need a chair, if they need a desk, whatever they need, they simply have to go to the administrator and they can get it. To start having everybody have a little pot of money, I think is bad fiscal policy. If it's a problem, and I think Mr. Muncy asked the right question at the beginning of President Winicky, is what do you need? Because certainly this board would not stand in the way of anything she needs, but I don't think we need a pot. It's not budgeted. We just need to hold the line on this, and I don't see why we need to make a change. It just makes no sense to me. It's been working. It's no issue.
I think Trustee Millette was next, I think, yeah.
I mean, it's in other towns, they do have them. I don't know if it's to that level, so I don't know if I'm not opposed to some amount. I might be opposed to 7,500 or 7,000. I mean, if it's an emergency, like we had the issue for National Night Out, somebody had to pay for the chairs, or the tables. So I mean, if it was, that was just under $500. I mean, maybe the amount is more of concern than the concept. Because there could be a concept where the administrator is unavailable, so it may not be a bad idea for the executive to have some authority, but yeah, probably not that much.
Trustee Burson?
Relative to the notion of people having pots of money, so to speak, our code provides for various pots of money, some for the village administrator, department heads, committee chairs. So as it stands today, village president is actually the only person that one would expect to have a pot of money that doesn't. And, well, I don't dispute Trustee Millett's contention that we might talk about the amount. The notion seems sound to me.
Yeah, if I just may. And again, if it's the will of this board, go for it, do it. But I would just challenge us from a fiscal perspective to take a step back. If the president needs something and they have to spend $500 in an emergency, they're going to get reimbursed, okay? It's going to happen. I don't think we need to create more bureaucracy, add more money or whatever to make that happen. And I think secondly, and more importantly, and I think we heard that from one of our financial committee members tonight, is we've entered the arena past the budget. If you want to change this prior to next budget, let's have the discussion. But we're only a third of the way through the year and we're changing things. And I don't think we should be changing things fiscally. I think it's a mistake and I think it's wrong. And for that reason, I can't support it. But if you want to make a change next year, so be it.
Okay, thank you, Trustee McKelvey. Trustee Burson?
Just have one final comment. Again, the president, the administrator, none of the people who are authorized a spend are authorized spends that don't fall within our budget. So no one is talking about a spend outside of the budget. I think you're imagining things that aren't here.
Okay, all right, moving on, we'll go to, now we have discussion item D. Motion to approve ordinance O-23-14, an ordinance amending Campton Hills Village Code regarding the village clerk's powers and duties. Discussion? Okay, Trustee Muncy.
Okay. I will try to do this cheerfully and respectfully and do so in a way that, what I'm trying to say here is, this should not be deemed as an argumentative thing or anything. We all have different opinions on, apparently, on how certain things should be done. I'm just trying to find the best solution, and that's why I want time to discuss this. And I didn't want this item specifically voted on tonight, because I would like everybody to have time to think about it. It's not a delay tactic, I really think we need to think about this. So, the proposal to have the village clerk powers and duties changed in the village code. In that proposal presented by Trustee Burson, the current powers and duties of preparing agendas for the Planning and Zoning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and serving as Secretary of the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals, both have been removed. And I just want to remind everybody that these are important roles for this specific commission and board because they deal with legally binding agreements and matters that bind the village to property owners, to businesses, to other things that we have to live by. And these need to be communicated to the village board very effectively to the best possible manner that it can be. And that's why we trust the village clerk to do that, so that we can find out exactly what has happened, what are they recommending, what action should we take, and decide appropriately. These are the creation of legal matters by that commission to us, and then we ratify or change those. That's important for the clerk, and that's why that was created. I have a number of other things, so one moment. It adds new powers and duties. I counted at least 12 of them. Trains all village employees in maintenance of files. Creates the clerk as the custodian of all contracts approved by the corporate authorities. To obtain access to the village website, to add, remove, and edit content on the website, to publish all necessary village records, to publish meeting notices and agendas, to publish approved minutes for the village board and other commissions, to prepare for and supervise all village elections, to give notice of all special meetings to the board of trustees and the village attorney, to file, deliver, or record all ordinances and resolutions that are required to be filed with, delivered to, or recorded to any other unit of government, including but not limited to Kane County or Camden Township, administer all oaths of office to all elected and appointed officials, police officers, and staff members, and serve as the FOIA officer for all FOIAs for the village. The way that I think this is being looked at is maybe somewhat short-sighted, and what I mean is this is being considered with the qualifications of the current clerk and deputy clerk, their individual qualifications, their individual schedules, and what some people think that they would be able to do or would be done well by them. What happens in the future if a different clerk is elected? This clerk position, the clerk position itself, is highly valuable, but it's also an elected official. You're giving a lot of responsibility to somebody who doesn't have any accountability. So if they don't do it well, you can't fire them. We can argue about what could potentially rise to malfeasance or whatever to have them removed, but it could be a real problem having all these responsibilities. And in addition, I looked through the election records. We never had more than one person on the ballot for clerk. We've had 2 times somebody was a write-in also, but it's hard to get people to run for this job. And you want to add all these responsibilities. I think as a board, this would be irresponsible, and we're going to have a hard time finding somebody who wants to do all of this especially under the current budget. And then we're asking for a new budget in addition here. So I don't think it's in the best interest. I think we need to think about this more and look at, and from our last discussion back in June, yes, we talked about we need to define the clerk duties, we need to figure out that out, research more. But I think we need to discuss it in doing so. I think this is going a little too far.
Trustee Burson?
I think you're being disingenuous. I think you're really an absolutist on this issue, and you don't want to make any changes. We had plenty of opportunities to discuss this. Some of these proposals have been circulated for quite some time now, and some of these things have been discussed in open session for quite some time now. No one is seeking to add duties or responsibilities to the clerk. What we're really seeking to do here is to clarify. In the statute, it says that the clerk is responsible for all papers, is the custodian of all papers, with very few exceptions after that. And so we have run into an obstacle in this current administration where the simple task of posting the minutes of our meetings on the village website was expected to go through an intermediary. And we've had to go back and forth and have public discussion over whether or not our clerk has the right, as I think the statute already makes clear, to do this. And I don't understand why you are imagining that this is not a responsibility of the clerk. I don't know why you would fight the notion that an independently elected person should be doing this as the statute contemplates. And I suggest that by better defining the role of the clerk and the expectations, rather than driving people away, you might actually attract more people to the job. So rather than people thinking that the clerk is nothing more than a glorified secretary who takes minutes during our meeting, and realize that the clerk has a wide range of statutory responsibilities and also has a wide range of responsibilities already under our code, I would think you would understand the responsibility. And when it comes to the notion that we are counting on the clerk to inform us of the motions of the Plan Commission or the ZBA, are you maintaining that it has been the regular practice for the clerk to attend those meetings and prepare those minutes and to inform us? Because I'm not aware that the clerk has been doing that.
Trustee Muncy?
I know the current clerk has not been doing that. That's correct. I don't know, before that we had a period of time when our clerk had resigned. I think Trustee McKelvey could speak to the rest. But first of all, let's stop saying things like I think you're being disingenuous. I think I made myself very clear on this during the June meeting, and I have repeated the same points. I think they're factual points. And to be factual, I would like you, and this is the point of having this discussion, and why we are not voting this tonight, which is good, I'd like you to point, or even if we want to ask President Winicky if she wants to have the village attorney do this, point to where the clerk is authorized to publish meeting notices and agendas in the current village code or statutes. I mean, I can go through the list here. All the things you say that the clerk currently is tasked with doing, I don't agree with them. I told you that before. I don't see it in here. I just don't see it. Serving as a FOIA officer, for example, you say that is something that more people would I guess I don't even go to that one. But the example of serving as a FOIA officer with the current clerk, I mean, we know that we're having village employees basically complete those right now at the request of the clerk, because the clerk doesn't have time. The clerk is not a full-time position. It was never designed to be like that. So the clerk has to ask a village employee to do it, and then granted there might be a benefit to having the clerk review it afterwards, but in some cases I understand that's the way it's going now. So the village clerk is not doing this. So again, please let's stay away from inflammatory language. I'm not being disingenuous. I'm being completely open about this, and I have been since the beginning. I have some concerns, and I think the clerk is a valuable position as is. If we want to talk about adding a few things or doing whatever within our current budget, great. But, you know, I have made my point clear multiple times here, and I'm being completely honest about it.
How about trustee Millet?
Sorry, here's me doing my own shtick about in other towns. It is normal for the clerk to be responsible for the planning and zoning commission in the village, period. That's not a question. Does it happen in happenstance? No, it does not. The South Elginville clerk does not attend the village planning commission meetings, but she does designate the deputy clerk to go in her place. I say she because she's a she. This was also true in Clarendon Hills, where previously it was not true in Downers Grove. There, the village clerk did attend. But it was also true in most of the time back in Longmont. So we can have it what we want to be, but I don't think we can remove the responsibility as to see it getting done is the clerk. Again, how it gets done with the deputy clerk can take that. I think there are several things in here that make sense. Maybe we could have not right now, but maybe we can straw poll it or something like that to see what makes sense for everything. And if we get down to a couple things that we are, I've heard FOIA from a couple things, and I've heard, and I just mentioned what I mentioned about the plan commission, and I think other committees too. That's another thing we generally have to decide if there is clerk representation at committee meetings or not. And you know, some of the things like ordinances, resolutions, et cetera, those are the clerks or clerks designee. I mean, that's the thing. And the publishing of the agenda generally is, again, that's normally the responsibility of the clerk. Again, most towns, the clerk doesn't physically do it themselves, but it's still a responsibility of that position. So, I mean, we can keep talking. I'm fine with that. I'm not trying to shut down this discussion, but maybe we could straw poll to see which ones we all are more in agreement on than not, so we can limit the focus on just the ones we need to hammer out. Just thought.
So, the clerk that was here before Lynn did attend the plan committee meetings. She took the minutes there, and then when she left, I think our deputy clerk would fill in to do that. The issue here too is the responsibilities that you'd be giving to the clerk would be a full-time position, I see. And what we've had historically is we've had an executive assistant that performed most of these things and also took the role of deputy clerk in order to help the clerk, because you know the clerk's part-time, has a full-time job, or it's like you said, it's a low salary type thing. You know, that I think that's what we worked into, and to have a more, you know, a management-centered position, not an elected position, because all these duties would take a lot more time for anybody to take on. Even FOIAs take a lot of time. You need somebody here at the village hall with access to the materials to do the job.
Okay, trustee Person.
I think in the spirit that we were talking about the clerk not necessarily attending the plan commission meetings, but taking responsibility for it, that notion applies to all of the clerk's responsibilities. And so I don't know that the suggestion is being made that the clerk would, for example, service each individual FOIA request and do all of the research involved in satisfying that request. But the clerk, as FOIA officer, would be the person who does the responding to the request, the person who takes that information that was gathered and responds to the person who asked for it. The clerk would be the person, as the FOIA officer, making the decision about what can be responded to in what way, what is exempt, what's not, would potentially take direction from our village attorney involving redactions and so forth. So I don't think that the responsibilities of the clerk suggest any particular number of hours engaged or suggest that it's a full-time job. It really has to do, with what the responsibility is. And it starts with the provision in the state statute that says all papers. And so, you know, we can try and squish that over into an administrative responsibility when it really isn't. I don't know that the current clerk has expressed any concern about the workload at the moment. And when you talk about it being a low salary position, it's almost an insulting statement, because every person sitting up here that's elected is essentially a volunteer working with a stipend. No one is working here expecting any fair market compensation for the work that they do. The clerk is relatively more compensated than the trustees are, but as we've just discussed, there's a broad range of responsibilities, but I don't think it's too broad.
Trustee Morgan.
And I have to say, I think if we look at the current FOIA situation, and we've heard the residents, they'd like us to stay out of the newspaper. So there would be better control if there was a better way that the FOIAs were being handled. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion?
I think Barb, excuse me, Madam President,
I'm sorry.
Village Administrator.
Yes, in terms of the FOIA response that landed us in the newspaper, the FOIAs were vetted by both sets of attorneys and redacted, so we went the extra mile to make sure whatever we put out was redacted and appropriate.
Trustee Muncy.
If I could, just to reiterate one of the points, because it's salient to what the discussion was just right then. For example, the FOIA task, saying that's a better process, or that it's something that the person could delegate or handle or approve. Someone who has a full-time job is now doing the FOIA part at night, and if she needs to speak, or he or she needs to speak with the village attorney, then they need you to take time off from work. Or having someone who's here during the day to be able to do that, I think, is important, among many of these other things. I am not stalwart in the village clerk can have no more powers and duties than what's in the current code. I'm open to a discussion. I just think this is way too much. I would prefer to do something like Trustee Millette said. Let's look at this and say that, things that are really important to you, or me, or whomever, here's the things that we either want to ask more questions about, we definitely want to have on there, or we could say, yeah, maybe this one isn't all that important. I think coming to some kind of compromise, it would be the best way to deal with this, rather than all or nothing. Because I'm not nothing. I just think this is too much.
Trustee McKelvey.
Yeah, just a quick comment. If it's not, apparently everybody thinks what we had was broken. And it seemed like it served this village for a long time. We did not have a deputy clerk. Someone subbed for the clerk that worked here to help out if the clerk could not make something or was sick or ill. And now what we want to do is we're creating more jobs, a larger job description. With a larger job description, what's going to happen, and I think Mr. Muncy touched on it, I don't think the current clerk is going to have the time. She's got a full-time job. And my understanding, the way FOIAs are now working, and correct me if I'm wrong, Village Administrator Denise, but my understanding is that right now, she would receive a FOIA, she gives it to one of you guys bird dog it, come up with all the data, dig it all out, and then she signs it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so what happened before? It came to you, you did all the work, you did all the bird dogging, and then you signed it, right? So all you're doing, that makes no sense to me. We're just adding a layer of government where it's not needed. It's ridiculous. We should just keep it the way it was. At least the people are here to add to Trustee Muncy's point.
Any other discussion, Nick?
Yeah. When I read through this the first time, I couldn't help but think about all the conversations that the clerk has had with us and also with the village administrator working on collaboration for the last couple of months and addressing these issues. I foresee it just with conversations and in the office just trying to hammer out these issues. And then here we get to the point where we're drafting an ordinance that now has these items of contention, and it's really just going to delay things that really could have been hammered out and taken care of, you know, the first couple of weeks, maybe with a mediator or somebody somehow just getting these things accomplished. And now we're here with a discussion item that's going to then be, you know, delayed for 2 weeks before it ends up being an action item. It's just disappointing that there's such a breakdown fundamentally before it gets here to the board. I mean, these things have been openly discussed and everybody's fully aware of many of these items on the list, and here they are, they have to now be defined with an ordinance, which is probably beneficial going forward to eliminate this same issue when there's a new clerk, new administrator, new board, new mayor. At least everything will be defined. Things need to be adjusted, rightfully so, but it's still disappointing that now we're delaying action for 2 weeks, and we've already been trying to do this for 2 months, you know, and here we are now. One thing that I would point out to the board when we're talking about shifting this burden over to the clerk, I would encourage everybody to think about if we take that burden from the administrator's plate or whoever else is handling these different areas. I know that there are lots of other items not addressed in this ordinance that could use lots of extra attention. There's lots of room for improvement in many different areas in the village, in the office, with the administration. And I think that we need to look long and hard rather than just checking all these off and saying that we shouldn't assign them to the clerk because it makes the role too big. Maybe look at this as a role that can actually handle more and use this as a tool to improve some of these other areas that are certainly going to probably be addressed in this exact same way. Because if we can't collaborate and get things done in the office between board meetings, are we going to end up having to draft everything in an ordinance? I mean, everything needs to be written out line by line because we can't collaborate and just solve things, you know, professionally at Village Hall. I mean, we have to do this every time. So here we are. It's going to be now 2 more weeks before we get this knocked out. I would have supported having this as an action item, knocking it out. Let's make the amendments, let's get it done and be done with it tonight. I had very few amendments to make to this. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Nick. Let's see. And Trustee Millette, and then.
Following up on that, I was thinking maybe this is the end result of some sort of, you know, collaboration on who's doing what, and if it's to resolve a conflict, that's one reason you do things like this, but also just to clarify, because things that have been assumed that maybe were wrong assumptions. I was just, when I read this before, I actually read it on my phone. Gotta stop reading things on my phone. It's too small. This looks worse, I think, from to Trustee McCully's point. I think this looks worse because some things are written out more verbose than they were originally, like preparation for elections and looking at right now notice of special meetings. Those are no-brainers. Delivery recording resolutions, that's kind of already there, but it's just written out in a whole subsection, so I think it literally makes it longer, so it makes it seem more, but it's still kind of the original. So I believe those are there for clarification based on what the original had been. Sorry, I keep saying that. The idea to whether this is the, call it job description, for the person currently here, valid, but really it should be what do we think the position should be in our organization, regardless of who's here. And if we get to a point where it's too much, I believe the clerk would say, no, that's too much. So I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not saying it's not a main consideration. It's a consideration, but I think the main consideration should be, what do we want this position to be within our organizational structure? Where do we want to clarify from state statute? Because state statute is vague on lots of things and arcane on others. So and that goes to the website part of things. The state statute does have things about it now, but when it talked about the duties of elected, it wasn't specifically stated. It would say posted, and that meant on the door. Now it can, it's morphed to be on a website. So that's something that definitely maybe you need to tweak that a little bit more. But if the clerk wants to post on the webpage the agenda, the clerk should post the agenda on the webpage. I mean, that's my vote.
Trustee Burson?
I just want to make one final comment to Trustee McKelvey's concerns. Firstly, we didn't have someone just sub for the clerk. We have had deputy clerks in the past. This is not a new concept. We have had the provision for 2 deputy clerks in the code for some time. So we're not introducing anything new when it comes to deputy clerks. But you're suggesting and stating really that we are, and it's not new. And there is not a new layer of bureaucracy being involved here either. We're simply transferring some of that responsibility from one person to another. That's not an additional layer of bureaucracy. I actually think that at the end of the day that you're going to see a savings over the mechanism that you're used to thinking of in Village Hall in the past.
Trustee Muncy?
Thank you. I'm not at this point hearing a lot of willingness to compromise, I guess. As the village attorney pointed out earlier, if someone would like to make a motion to move this back on an action item and vote on it, if you don't want to deliberate or discuss or come to compromise over the next 2 weeks, that's still a possibility if you want to make that motion, and we can move it back to action items and vote on it tonight. But I think you've already heard my comments.
Our administrator would like to say something.
I guess what I'd like to ask, Trustee Bodner mentioned that there were many things happening in the Village Hall that needed to be improved. I have not gotten a list. I'm curious as to what those might be. I think our staff has been doing a phenomenal job, the staff that we now have. And I would invite you to come in and tell me what you find the issues are. So, thank you.
All right, I think, did you have one last comment? Then I think we need to move on.
I'll just respond to that has actually been a priority on my list, and I have been trying to coordinate that meeting with you as well as a couple other folks at the office. I'm working with Barb to get that accomplished right now.
Thank you, Nick. Yes? Okay, our attorney?
Yes, so with regard to the clerk's duties and responsibilities, a lot of them are contained within the municipal code, specifically the section related to village clerk that's said at the beginning of the ordinance. However, they're not all there. Some are in the Freedom of Information Act, in the Open Meetings Act, in the Election Code, the Code of Civil Procedure. So it's not just that specific location. That's where the majority of them are. So it's unfortunately the municipal code is not very well, doesn't keep them all in one place.
Thank you, Carmen. Okay, I think we should move on to the next action item.
Well, we were talking about whether this would be moved to action, so you want to do that at the end? Or you want to do it now?
Well, from what I understood, it'd be on the next month agenda.
We can move it to action now, although if we do, I would like to move to amend the ordinance as presented.
I second that.
Who's second? Tim? All right, you second to move it back to an action item. Okay. Any discussion about that?
Well, it's a little complicated parliamentary wise, but we can help us because we're
That would work if it passes it.
So at what point do we talk about the amendment?
You should vote to bring it back to the next one.
All right.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Bodnar?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Nay.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. All right, we're back to an action item.
And I wanted to make a motion to amend
Okay,
that item,
yes.
which I've discussed a bit with our village attorney, so I want to make sure I express this clearly.
I can indicate the requested changes if you'd like.
Well, there was the matter that we spoke about, and then also the matter that trustee Bodnar and trustee Millet and I have spoken about, so
I can't.
you can explain.
Carmen, do you want to share your microphone, Carmen?
Oh, sure. Thank you. There were a couple of requested amendments in it's in E, custodian of documents. The change starts as including all electronically held documents or other records, and then it would continue reading, which are not assigned to the custody of some other officer, except for documents relating to litigation, which shall be in the custody of the village president. So it clarifies that section and changes the order. Later on in that section, the third to last line, the village clerk shall have a designated secure workspace within Village Hall, not indicating office. Those are those two changes, and then in section H, it's really just cutting the sentences up. It will indicate the village clerk shall have access to the village website that will allow him, her, the ability to add, remove, and edit content on said website, period. The village clerk shall publish all necessary village records, meeting notices and agendas, and approved minutes of the village board, period. And the village clerk shall publish all necessary records, meetings, notices, agendas, and approved minutes of other commissions, so on and so on. So it separates the three sentences out. Those are the only changes that were requested.
All right,
So I move that we proceed with action as amended.
okay. Do I have a second for that?
I second.
Was that Mike or Tim? Okay, Tim Morgan seconded. Okay, roll call.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Bodnar?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
No.
Trustee Millet?
Are we on the moving it as amended or just on the amendments?
Moving it as amended.
Moving it.
Oh, and I get another amendment, so nay. That's
Oh,
okay.
you want to go back?
Yeah.
We'll do that.
I'll just-
You would have to,
We gotta vote. Yes or no? 2 nays.
Trustee Muncy?
Nay.
President Warnicki?
Yes. Okay, motion passes. All right, back to the last discussion item, correct, Carmen? Okay, we've got 6E. Motion to approve resolution R-23-20, a resolution approving the appointment of village treasurer Timothy McPhillips as budget officer for the village of Canton Hills. All right, discussion,
Discussion.
yeah. All right, discussion. Yeah, trustee Morgan.
Yes, I think we need to give Mr. McPhillips some time. He hasn't had the position for very long. He's had to come in and take over someone else's set of books and some other people's actions. So I think if we're patient with him, he's been forward with us that he is working through the last things that he has to do with the with both budgeting and the audit that's being finalized. So I don't think there's any reason to put him under the bus per se. And I think we need to move forward with this and with him as the budget officer because he does have the financial background to be able to do it.
All right, any more discussion? move it as an action item, move it back up.
One point, the budget officer, clearly in the personnel manual describes the village administrator as the budget officer. It's also in the job description. Mr. McPhillips hasn't even been asked if he'd like to be the budget officer. He's a part-time employee. It might be very difficult for him to be able to prepare the whole budget and also do the financials. There's a difference between the budget officer and the treasurer. So you're asking him, again, to add to his duties and to change the village, the personnel manual.
All right, any other discussion on that? Trustee Burson, was your request to put it on the agenda?
It was. Treasurer McPhillips, did I have a conversation with you about this?
Not specifically about taking over the role and having it on the agenda, no.
Yeah.
My biggest concern right now on taking over the role, not that I'd be opposed to it, is we've had some administrative changes. And internally, probably the most important thing I want to keep an eye on is making sure payroll is processed correctly. There's a lot of statutory requirements around that. And I want to make sure that's done correctly before I take on any other duties.
So you would prefer to not take on this responsibility at this time?
Not at this moment, until I have a little more clarity on everything that you would like me to do and maybe what the expectations are.
Okay, thank you. Move to table it.
Okay, for this action item, or a discussion item, so, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, very good. All right, we're gonna move ahead to 7, current discussion items. Norton Lakes reduction and letter of credit. And I think I'll leave that to you.
So in your packet, you'll see that Mr. Hank Harrison came to the village board back in November asking for a letter of credit reduction to $348,039.48. However, the village board then felt it was necessary to hold on to more money based upon, they kept the stormwater drainage issue. They decided to keep $566,000 as the letter of credit. In June, when the letter of credit expired, Mr. Harrison realized we didn't go as low as he wanted. So he asked that I bring it back to the board and again request the reduction down to $348,000. And we do have the support of our village engineer, and also Mr. Galucci has also said he felt comfortable reducing it to the $348,000 number.
Okay, any more discussion? I'm sorry, Trustee
Thank you,
Malone?
Madam President. The one thing, before we do this, we should verify if the SSA was established, the backup SSA for the stormwater, something was part of the original subdivision approval, and it's been so long, I don't know if it actually got set. So before I would entertain a further letter of credit reduction, I think we should confirm that the SSA was properly filed and is currently in effect, because we're also coming up close to having final completion, and they're going to be looking for acceptance. So I think this is a good time to get his attention up. And if he wants something from us, he can, confirm to us that, yeah, the backup SSA was set and filed, or if it wasn't, then do it.
Good point. All right, any other discussion? Okay. Current discussion items, building department registration. Is that Nick? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been continuing to work on it, taking the board's feedback. I am at the point where, with the transition from Montana Welch to our new attorneys, I need to basically build something that can be an action item. Where I'm at right now, I have not written motion or ordinance before. So I'm working with some precedents, trying to put that together. Have had great feedback though. It's quite innovative, the way that we're doing a lot of this. And it's actually from some of the villages that I've discussed this with, getting their feedback. It gave me hope just hearing that they were like, wow, this really solves quite a few issues that we have with chasing paperwork and the complications that go along with the contractor registration. So I hope to present an action item to the board soon.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Muncy?
Yeah, I had a question. I thought we had discussed the potential for discussing this with local contractors, maybe even public, hearing feedback, that sort of thing, to get, I think both our mics are on, to get some sort of, the other side of the story, basically. And we're hearing from villages that are looking at it from their side. What about the contractors? How is this going to go over with them? I thought we discussed that, just didn't know if that was still on your radar or what.
And I have discussed with several local contractors. We did make adjustments. The one item that concerned contractors was the cost of the contractor registration. It was initially proposed to be at $500. The reason for the fees being higher than other towns is the way that we would prorate that structure. It'd be very unusual for all the licensing to come in where it was good for a full year. But we did have different structures, which are based on the feedback we got from other contractors. So the fee went down to $350 versus $500, which the consensus was much more affordable for all contractors. We also added some different call it scales, a 1 month registration, and then your annual registration. So your one-time contractors that are just coming through town, they're doing one job, one roof, they're not local and don't anticipate doing any other work in the village, it would be a $75 1 month registration. So the feedback from local contractors was really about cost. Nobody that I talked to was actually intimidated by it, but they had the, sort of the insight that this could be an issue for other contractors. So I did make those adjustments. Also further conversations with the building department. We were in agreement on everything except for roofs. Joanne's feedback and all of her experience that I took to heart. And if the one area that they felt was very important to continue providing inspections on was replacement roofs, I also recognized that in the easy permit process, and I did eliminate roofs from that process. So really all of the feedback that I've received from everybody has gone directly into it.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, moving forward, I'll entertain a motion to move into closed session for reasons of appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees or contractors, litigation that is filed and pending or is probable or imminent, discussion of closed session minutes, and finally another matter specifically permitted as an exception under the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Moved by
Before-
Trustee Burson.
Before anybody seconds,
Mhm.
you skipped over additional information items.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to,
Mhm.
I think we all feel the same thing, to thank the interim chief and Citizens Police Academy, sir, everybody that was mentioned, Community Relations Committee, everybody that busted hump for National Night Out. That was a fantastic event. That's definitely the best we ever had. And wasn't as humid as it was in the past. It still was a little bit though, but no, just before I go, I just want to get straight. The public is here to us to thank.
So you promised good weather.
Yes.
Thank you, Trustee Millett.
And I'll second the motion now,
Trustee Morgan?
unless Tim wants to.
I just want to thank the scouts for coming to the meeting tonight and for watching and listening and the great Pledge of Allegiance that you did. Thank you very much.
All right, any other?
I would just note that you do have an item set after closed session for potential action.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And notice the license plates on my car, Steve, just saying.
Okay, motion to go into closed session.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay. Second by trustee Morgan. And roll call.
Trustee Person?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Boger?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Malek?
Aye.
And trustee Muncy?
Aye.